Welcome back to another episode of The Art of Volunteering. I'm your host, Stormy Bell. Today we have a new friend, someone I haven't known that long, but I'm really looking forward to his insight. Community and belonging are key aspects of volunteering, and Dr. B.K. Taylor, who specializes in building a community amongst students by having experiences of sense of belonging. That's a lot in there, but he's going to dive into that a little bit more. So welcome, BK.
Thanks for having me.
With over a decade of experience in higher education, BK's focus has been on student wellness and well-being. He has consistently strived to establish a connection between students' experiences and their inherent meaning and purpose. So with that, let's dive right in. And what is the impact volunteering has on the need for students or individuals to experience a sense of belonging?
Well, I think it has a pretty profound impact. I think it's a way of connecting kind of with yourself, with a community, and with other communities, depending on what it is that you're doing as it pertains to volunteering. I think in my experience, I think about my volunteering as a way of learning a great deal about myself and my own experiences and how they connect with other people, but also being able to connect with the people that I got to volunteer with in a variety of different ways, but also showing up in a place that was new or even in some ways foreign to me and learning a great deal about those individuals and their experiences and the needs that they brought to the table.
That's awesome. So, how does you talked about finding like a deeper understanding and building those relationships? What's the I want to pull here, like finding meaning and purpose, the idea of serving something or someone greater than yourself. Like, can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah. I specialize also in the field of well-being, and we think about well-being. Sometimes we often think of the word happiness. And happiness is a difficult word because this idea of like what brings joy to your life. But one of the things that expands well-being beyond happiness is this idea of meaning and purpose. It's this idea, kind of as you suggested, of serving something greater than yourself to do more. The best way I can kind of reflect this is actually through a parable. So, have you ever heard of the parable of the Masons?
Maybe.
So there are three Masons. There's an interviewer, and they're asking these Masons questions. So they go to the first Mason, and they say, "What are you doing?" And the Mason says, "Well, I stack bricks. It's terrible. It's an awful job. I hate stacking bricks." Okay. So they go to the second Mason, and they say, "What are you doing?" And the Mason says, I'm building a building. It has its good days and it has its bad days, but I'm ultimately building a building." And then they go to the third Mason. They say, "What are you doing?" And the Mason says, "I'm building a cathedral. I'm building a place where thousands of people's lives will be saved every single day. There aren't bad days." The interesting thing about this parable is those Masons were all working on the same job, right?
Wow.
This idea of meaning and purpose is really about what you find yourself connected to. Everything a person does through, from volunteering to all the way up into what I would hope is their employment, there can be meaning and purpose behind it. And I think that that can really change the way someone navigates their lives. What keeps us doing the work that we're deeply passionate about. I wouldn't do what it is that I do if it weren't for the students and the opportunity to connect to something that I perceive bigger than me, which is the future that they get to create for us and that they get to explore and go beyond what even I could think of. And that excites me, and that gives me purpose and meaning in the work that I do.
That's awesome. Now we talked about like building a community for students. What is your title? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am the Assistant Vice President of Health and Wellness. So my roles are to really to be concerned with and cultivate the health and wellness through our students. And I expand that a little bit further into some of this well-being, which includes belonging and purpose and meaning. And I think that's really to try to fulfill a vision of what higher education can be. It's not just about getting a job or just about getting a diploma. Those are things that we would still hope that you get, but it's about becoming the best version of yourself. And the best version of yourself has community, belonging, and meaning in your life. And that's my goal to cultivate within the students that I work with.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Um, in the work that you do you see impact? Can you share maybe a story of from a student's life or maybe your own life that you've literally seen volunteering or that community change the course or expanded the course for that person?
Yeah. So I'll actually go back to a story. I got to go with a group of students. This was earlier in my career, to New York City, in which we were focusing on mental health, but we were wanting to really give back. So one of the things that we ended up doing on this course of this trip was actually to be in a food kitchen where we would get to serve food to people who didn't have access to it, to help them also get connected with groceries. So we're in New York City, and at the time, I was in rural Missouri. So I was with a group of students from rural Missouri. So a town of like 12,000. And now we're in New York City serving food to ultimately strangers. Well, something that was really interesting is one of the students I was really close to and that I got to work along with was actually from Nepal. So she was on this trip, contributing back to New York City and helping towards these efforts of expanding mental health services across our nation. But we were in this service, and we've got this long line of people, and this young woman, this young student who I'm working with, who is often pretty meek and reserved, is now put into this situation. And one of the incredible moments that happened is that there was this woman in this line trying to get her groceries, trying to get connected to the food serving experience, but she didn't speak English, and the vast majority of us there did. What she did speak was Nepali. So this student was able to kind of break out of her shell and really act as a translator in that very moment for this woman. And you could just see how she grew not only kind of exponentially in that moment to really kind of rise to the occasion and be able to provide something that was truly unique to this person, a means to communicate with the rest of us and getting them connected to the services and food that they really need. But I think really launched this person off into their career, which they pursued into like medicine. And I think it was that breaking of that shell and realizing that they could do far more than they ever imagined when placed in a situation that, by all odds, was quite unusual.
Oh, that's amazing. I love stories like that. But when you're talking, it made me think you're talking about more like the mental wellness. And this might be a loaded question, but do you think if more like high schools or colleges focused on students volunteering, getting out of their shells and having those opportunities, we'd see less like anxiety and some of the other emotional issues that we're seeing more, especially since COVID?
That is an excellent question. I'm going to pivot away from directly answering the first question about the less anxiety and less depression, because that's hard to say, right? It's those things are something that people manage and journey with their lives. But what I will say is I think it would bring two things to the table that I think are really, really important. The first one is I would say that with a really good volunteer framework, which I think is something that people really need to evolve, to have, and to work on. Often, when people are first in their journey of volunteerism, they really see that as coming in and providing something for people who need their help. And I would really challenge that as I've had time to evolve and work with some really great people within this work to say that that's not really what it is. It's about coming and meeting with people to hear their ideas and to understand a community and for more of a joint effort to overcome the barriers that may exist in the needs of those individuals. So the first thing I would say by understanding and evolving one's understanding of volunteerism is there's also a deeper empathy and understanding of the human experience and the challenges that people face. So that would be the first thing I'd say. And the second one is way, way easier, which is in all of the time that I've studied well-being and happiness, the number one trick that I can tell people if they want to change their kind of happiness effect as quickly as possible is to help someone else.
Okay.
The best way to change your state of happiness is to help someone else be happy. And it has an immediate hedonic effect on us and can actually change our happiness really profoundly as well. So would it decrease those things as people journey through them? I'm not really sure. What I would say is it would increase those two things, and I think that's abundantly valuable.
Okay. I had I guess he was a psychotherapist on, and we talked about volunteers um, getting more out of it than what they're giving. And that when they leave whatever setting that it is, that they come out with a warm glow. Like there's just like, it's not, it might not even be a satisfaction, but it's like giving of themselves, and just that, I don't even know what word I want to use. Just that feeling like I've done something to help someone else.
Well, I think it hits on several of the things that really research shows is what makes people happy, right? It's not only the really practical of you helping someone else, research-based shows an increase in happiness, but one of the other major variables is connectedness. And often in volunteer work, you get to connect, you get to be with other humans and help work with other humans. So there's that connectedness piece. There's a really big indicator of happiness having a relationship with that sense of purpose, right? So this idea that you get to not only give to something beyond you, to other humans, and often towards a greater goal or initiative can be super valuable. So it's not surprising that volunteerism would have multiple kind of scientifically driven lines to increasing psychological well-being.
Oh, awesome. I love it when all these pieces come together. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share on that before I pivot to my next question? Anything that you thought of that would be appropriate?
Yeah, nothing stands out. I do think about those, just the number of stories of getting to see people come together and kind of break out of their shell as they have these experiences, and how, like you said, it really is such an extraordinary experience to get to see people kind of find themselves while on these journeys.
Oh, I love it. So we're going to pivot, and I'm going to turn it to you. Do you have a volunteer journey, and would you be willing to share it?
Yeah. Well, my volunteer journey started when I was quite a bit younger, actually, before I was ever in college. I had the opportunity to do a fair amount of different kinds of volunteerism and mission work throughout our nation, and particularly going up to, there's a name for it, but the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and doing some construction work. So I would do siding and painting and some electrical work. So I started really early into those journeys, and then getting to explore into student groups and activities, to taking people various different places to help and get to give back. And even to this day, I still try, though I don't public speak as much as I used to, even my time as a public speaker, giving to organizations in a way of being able to share these ideas and help kind of cultivate and move forward as a way of saying, here's the information I share. And though this is something that I may do in some spaces for a career, how can I give that to you as an organization that is really helping to better other communities or organizations in really positive ways? So I always love to be able to give back and to really help anywhere where it's cultivating young people to move forward and help make our world a better place.
Love it. So in that, you've already answered my next question, is like, what motivates you, or why you volunteer? So you answered my question. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Moving along, I'm going to ask you a very hard question. Can you share a blooper? Something that you either were facilitating, something that happened to you personally, or something that you witnessed, where it doesn't mean that it went wrong. It just didn't go as planned, and what was learned from the experience.
Yeah. I'm actually going to jump back to that New York trip. It was such a profoundly incredible experience for me, not only with those students, but I'll be truthful with you, it was also a deeply challenging experience. We ended up having a reasonably difficult time, ended up staying in a hostel in the Bronx and having a very difficult time both getting in and out of the Bronx. At some point, spending a significant amount of time lost on the subway. And in all of those experiences, now remember, forgive us, but we were, from rural Missouri, and it wasn't something we were terribly versed in. We experienced a fair amount of challenges, and as much as those challenges presented, it also brought us all closer. It gave us an incredible opportunity to spend time with those students on the subway, having conversations about their experiences and their future aspirations and the journeys that they were on. And what I'll say, despite the complications and the challenges that existed on that trip, I ultimately stayed connected with a significant chunk of those students, all the way to some of them. One of them ended up being one of my graduate assistants as they went on to their masters, being referenced to ones as when they went on to additional schooling, and seeing them really get to grow as individuals in their careers over many years from that point. So despite the challenges we faced on that journey, it taught me a lot as a young educator, and it was incredible to be able to establish that relationship with those students and be able to see them not only through their tenure in higher education, but to see them launch into their professional life and really become incredible young people who I saw already as such incredible young people in those moments as volunteers, but further into their journeys into the future.
So that the opportunity to bond was so much there, and just how you got to see each other handle those challenges, and you really like well, I say you bond, you knit it together. Oh, that's and then you get to see that long term. I think you did a good job.
Well,
Good
I
for you.
appreciate it. Well, and I think that's another thing, and I don't think this is unique to my experience, but the bonding that one does during during volunteerism is something that I think is hard to measure. You know, my best man at my wedding was one of the people I went to that volunteer trip or I went to that volunteer trip in Michigan multiple years in a row, but ultimately he and I went there together. Like we were very close friends, and it brought us closer. And I think about those students that I'm still connected to, or even the faculty that I went on those trips with. It's hard to deny the positive relationship you cultivate with the people that you're next to in those spaces.
Well, that's building your community, um, whether it's just two people or a greater sense. And many these days of isolation, people need those communities to help them through, or to see, that they're not alone.
No, without doubt, I could not resonate more with that statement and the critical nature of it.
Awesome. Well, we are at the end of our conversation. It's been good. There's a lot that we've covered, and I think my listeners will really have found value in it. But before we go, I want to give you the mic. And in that, I want you to love on your experience as an educator, or your students, or the students that went to New York City with you. Just love on them. Something that we didn't cover, something that you want to share, anything. You have the mic.
Well, you've given me too much because I have too much.
Sorry, you go ahead.
No. It's there's so many people to praise and to use your language to love on. Right? It is like I adore those students that I got to go on that privilege with New York, and I will say though that was towards the beginning of my professional career. It probably defined my professional career in a lot of ways, in the sense of my commitment to students, but also my ability to manage crisis, and I really do owe a lot to that experience. But I guess I want to generalize to students in general in that experience, or those who get the opportunity to connect with young people. It, it is such a critical piece of this journey that I can't deny, and that I want to re-articulate my appreciation for, and why it is so critical. I tell people, what makes me excited about this work is not what I'm going to do, right? So I've kind of already accepted I will not be revolutionizing the health, wellness, or well-being of the American people. I can do my best, but it's just not looking like it's in the cards. But what I get to do every day is I get to build out something here at this institution focused on those three things. And what I hope is it plants a seed within our students to say, well, why couldn't it be this beyond this space? And that's the part that I think is truly exciting when we get to do these opportunities and get to connect with these individuals, is it's this idea that we can believe in the importance of volunteerism, like the conversation we're having now, but that when it finds its way into the heart of a young person, it can go far beyond anything that we could imagine. And it can become so much more than we can imagine, in the sense of how they integrate that into new spaces and integrate that into new ideas that you and I couldn't even speculate about. And I think that is what really excites me, is the sheer possibility of those who are around us, and why we should take time to really cultivate it, right? I once said when I started off professional speaking, which I did when I was far too young, I really struggled, because it was this idea of like, why me? Why at that point I was, a 20 something public speaking. And I really struggled with why listen to me? And I finally got to a point, to an answer, which was, why not? Right? See, the idea is that if someone comes in who's a brilliant doctor who studied years on something, of course you should listen. They have great expertise to lend you. But I think the thing that we often overlook, that is, even if a child comes in, they see the world in a way that maybe you don't, and that has an abundance of value. So really getting any opportunity to see the various perspectives, to cultivate the heart of those who are willing to share and give and make this world a better place, is something that we can't underestimate, no matter where a person is in their journey. So I think that's why so much of my passion towards volunteerism has been towards the youth and towards younger individuals, and probably also why I've made a career committed to committed to education, and in particularly higher education. So that was a lot. Thank you so much for lending me that space.
No, I love it. Thank you for sharing. All right. Thank you, BK, for being on the podcast today. I so enjoyed it, and I know my listeners did. And to my listeners, because you found value, I'd like you to go and rate and review this episode, because it truly does help others who are volunteering at different levels, who together are helping to restore the fabric of our society, to hear about it. So please do that. And I will see you next time on The Art of Volunteering. Have a great day. Bye bye.